You're listening to the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. It's fast, fun, free, daily deep dive Bible, and right now we're working on the book of Nehemiah. If you're new, welcome. You can jump in right here, or you can always go back and start at the beginning of any season. The whole podcast is available in an easy-to-use format at thetmbh.com.
All right, here's one for you. Question. What are the modern myths that so transcend culture that everybody knows the gist of the storyline, but that are created recently, modern here, that are so well known that you don't have to worry about spoilers at all? For example, obviously Star Wars is one of these. You don't have to worry about just casually dropping in conversation the details about the relationship between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. It permeates society. People know. It's so much bigger than a spoiler. It's a metaphor. It's a cautionary tale. It's reached the status of myth. Will it stand the test of time? I don't know. But right now, people are way more familiar with the Star Wars myth than they are with most Greek mythology or Norse mythology or anything like that. So what are the other ones that come to mind? You probably got the Marvel Cinematic Universe before it got boring and stupid and nobody cared anymore. But that was pretty good for a while. Lord of the Rings, right? What else you got? The Matrix? I don't think that's good enough. I don't think it rises to that level. It flirted with it early on, but it didn't make it. I'm doing this in real time. I'm thinking, is that it? Game of Thrones doesn't rise to that level because it's too crass. It's not accessible for everybody. And if kids can't appreciate the myth, it doesn't count as rising to the level of well-known myth that I'm talking about here. I think that's it. I don't know. I'd be very interested to hear your opinions on this. Myths that so permeate societal knowledge at this point that are both modern and so well known that you don't have to worry about spoiling everything because all of the lessons are just in there and well known. My question, I guess, or my follow-up question is, what about Dune? Are we getting there with Dune? I mean, what's it take? One more great movie, great installment of this story, and maybe it gets there? I think it is the most likely to be on track for this. I don't think Harry Potter gets there either. It's a little too niche. Oh, maybe Dune, right? So I bring this all up because I'm debating whether or not I have to clarify a couple of spoilers, and I think I don't. I think I'm just going to give you some of the basics of the story here as I talk just a little bit about Dune, and then we're going to talk about Nehemiah, of course, because we talk about Nehemiah when we do this because it's about the Bible and whatnot. All right. Dune, the book and the cinematic series to go with it, is set in this universe, but way, 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 way in the future. And so there's all this lingering stuff from now, like religious assumptions, and there's even a nod to World War II, which is wild the way Frank Herbert describes it in the book. It's like House Washington used the first atomics against House Nippon, and that was powerful enough to send a message to the world that House Washington was able to displace the power and influence of House Windsor. Is like really clever the way it's written. But one of the themes that really comes through in Dune that I think is super poignant for what we're dealing with in this Old Testament stuff we've been looking at is the theme of prophecy and fulfillment, and particularly the power of a prophetic narrative, even if the prophetic narrative is false. Even in the great, far distant, enlightened future, people are still looking to religious narrative. I mean, maybe even more than they do at the time that Frank Herbert was actually writing the book Dune. And so there's this class of prophetess / kind of witches. It's not quite as pagan as it sounds, but also it's probably more pagan than it sounds. And they're called the Bene Gesserit. And these Bene Gesserit, they're like masons, sort of. They're caretakers of society. They go beyond the boundaries of government, and they have such religious authority that they even have the power to seed new myths, to seed new prophecies in certain cultures that they want to manipulate and control. And so a big plot point in Dune is that these prophets used their credibility to just make up out of their own heads a whole prophecy about some sort of Messiah character that they then seeded amongst the native people of the planet Arrakis, or the planet Dune, where almost all of the action takes place. And then the plot line is this guy the fulfillment of a prophecy that is completely acknowledged by the people who made it up? It's being a fake prophecy? Like, how can someone so completely fulfill a made-up prophecy? How does that work? And are the people being gullible and is this whole thing just meant to control, or is there some higher power that's navigating all this? This is very, very interesting. Likewise, in Nehemiah chapter 6, we come upon a situation where the power of prophecy, or even false prophecy, to sway a people who have seen the mighty hand of even a real deity at work is on display, and some of the same questions come to the forefront. Quick aside, seriously, I would love it if you would jump in and tell me what you think are modern myths, or modern myths in waiting even, that meet my criteria, that are maybe up and coming that I didn't think of. I'm posting a conversation thread now that is open to everyone, whether you support at all or not, over at the Patreon site. So you can just jump in there. You can register with Patreon or whatever. And I've just got it set to open so that we can all talk over there, because we've been having the conversation on Reddit, and I'm a little worn out on Reddit, and I don't want to make you have to wade through all of that. So everybody has access over there on, the perks and stuff, like sending things out. I'm still keeping that exclusive to the people who are supporting, because I just want to say thank you to you. But that just seems like a better place to host the conversation. So if you want to weigh in, there will be a thread over there. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Nehemiah 6:10. One day I, Nehemiah, went to the house of Shemaiah, son of Deliah, the son of Mehetabel. All right, so already we can see, remember the remembrance theme that we talked about a bunch yesterday, we can see that this is somebody who has credentials at least a couple of generations back. That's very important to Ezra. It's very important to Nehemiah. This is a guy who theoretically has a family claim on this inheritance and on this project. So what's going on with this Shemaiah guy? It says he was shut in at his home. It looks like there's really no clarification as to what that means. You could speculate about this a couple different ways, and I suppose people have. One is that Shemaiah knew that Nehemiah was very intentionally coming to talk with him, and he was afraid of Nehemiah and didn't want to meet with him in his home, so he shut himself up in his home, and here in a minute is going to propose meeting somewhere else. Theory number 2 that I've heard is that Shemaiah is supposedly, ostensibly, afraid of Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem and all of the enemies, and so he's shut up in his home. Maybe he's run his mouth too much, and he just can't go outside right now. He's very, very paranoid, and he's just got like the little slidey thing in the door, and he's like, hey, what's the password? We can't talk here. We got to go somewhere else. It's not safe. Something like that. I'm not exactly sure what Nehemiah is saying about why he was shut in his home, but those seem like good theories. Let's keep reading. Shemaiah said, I like to imagine he's saying this through the little tiny door that he slides open like a speakeasy, let us meet in the house of God inside the temple, and let us close the temple doors, because men are coming to kill you. By night, they're coming to kill you. But I, Nehemiah, said, should a man like me run away? Or should one like me go into the temple to save his life? No, I will not go. Now, at this point in the story, it looks like this Shemaiah fellow maybe is just being savvy. There's good reason to be paranoid. We've got chapter after chapter of people threatening them. The threats are real, but who is he and whose side is he on? Well, what he's asking is a bigger deal than it seems like on paper. I mean, the temple is kind of the keep, the citadel of the city, if you will. It's the most secure, most stout place that somebody could go. It's the best guarded place. It's like the walls within the walls. And so I guess if you wanted to retreat as though you were under siege, that would be, if it were a castle and not a consecrated temple set apart for God, you would retreat into that building under normal circumstances. But it's a pretty weighty thing to consider, because that temple and closing yourself in the temple, that means something. This is set apart for God. You can't really go into that space unless you are a specific priest of a specific order, descended from a specific lineage, and it's your time to be in there. This isn't some casual place where you mill around and do whatever you want. It's a very big deal to go into the temple at all, let alone to go clear into the temple and shut the doors. I mean, maybe Shemaiah is even suggesting that they go into the keep of keeps, which would be the Holy of Holies. And theoretically, if you go in there, you die if you're not authorized. I mean, they were tying ropes around dudes' waists who were authorized to go in there just in case they didn't wash something right or do something right, and they would die in the holy presence of the Lord. Then nobody can go in and get the bodies, so they'd have to drag them out by the rope. I mean, this is how seriously they take it. And this Shemaiah dude's just throwing this out all casually. We got to go in there. It's not safe here. It's where we got to go and meet. Well, Nehemiah, he's so smart. He sees through everything, and he determines that this is a trick to erode his reputation, to make him look like a coward, and maybe to trick him into holding himself out as some reincarnation or new version of an ancient hero of the Jewish people who did something kind of like this once a long time ago. Nehemiah has detected that this is definitely an attempt to undermine him. This is friendly fire, mind you. This is coming from one of his own people, a supposed ally. He's figured out it's an attempt to undermine him by getting him to abuse his power, to get access he should not have to the temple, and to use the temple in a way it should not be used under maybe any circumstances. It's at least that, Nehemiah thinks. And maybe further, I suspect that it is an attempt to get Nehemiah to be accused of imagining himself to be like one of the great kings, the greatest king even of old, and to arrogantly elevate himself to that status by following the advice of Shemaiah. Verse 12, I, Nehemiah, realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He'd been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name and discredit me. He's brilliant. He sees through everything, and I don't believe for a second that he would have put this down in writing if the original audience didn't know dang well that that's exactly what Shemaiah did. Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, the son of Mehetabel, let the memory stand. I don't think Nehemiah would have written this down if the original audience didn't know for sure that that guy was indeed paid off by Tobiah and Sanballat to trick Nehemiah by posing as a friend into doing something that would be horribly damaging to the unity of the people, the progress of the project, and his reputation. No, this dude's savvy. He can see through this nonsense. And what Tobiah and Sanballat did was frankly pretty clever. It's kind of like the Bene Gesserit witches of the modern myth Dune, who figured out that they could use the power of prophecy, even their enemies' sense of prophecy that they don't even necessarily embrace or believe has any deity behind it. They could use such prophecy against their enemies to manipulate and control them, and even to eliminate undesirable people through effectively religious political character assassination by duping the masses with false prophecy. Tobiah and Sanballat tried that by hiring this fellow who we're going to discover as we read a couple more verses tomorrow is lumped in with some other prophets they tried to work with and bilk into manipulating Nehemiah. And in the end, Nehemiah is just too shrewd. He sees through it. Instead of Sanballat and Tobiah and Shemaiah, who loves money, getting their way, they instead end up looking stupid again, and Shemaiah's name goes down in history instead of just being graciously forgotten like most people at this time. Here it is being repeated for 2.5 millennia as a name of great dishonor. There's more to unpack here. We're going to talk more about that theme of prophetic manipulation as well. Again, the conversation is moving over to Patreon. There's a link down below. You do not have to support the program to be a part of that conversation. I just want to spare you all the Reddit experience. Our little corner of Reddit has been pretty good over there. I like the way you all have handled your business, but I think putting the conversation on Patreon gives us more control over that and sets all of you up for more success in your internet travels as well. So if you feel like weighing in, it'd be great to have you. If not, no problem at all. Mas mañana. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.